Shigat, and thank you to everyone for joining our third session, our second discussion of today, MTERA's In Action, the Collective Action Projects. This discussion highlights the collective action initiatives underway at MTERA. These collective action initiatives are areas where our member tribes are collaborating to explore opportunities to benefit from economies of scale and additional benefits from regional collaboration. Our panelists for today are Burczyk, Martyna, Triggs, and Karin Wadsack. Drew is a consultant at 1898 and Company, a Burns and McDonnell company, with experiences in power supply and resource planning studies. Drew uses economic models to perform integrated resource planning, requests for proposed bid evaluations, competitive transmission planning, and other economic studies. This analysis helps to inform and advise clients in their decision-making process. Martyna Triggs is a senior market analyst for the Capacity Consulting and manages the team of startups, nonprofit organizations, government entities, and multi-million-dollar companies. Her experience includes leading Sullivan County Casino Study, Dutchess County ARC Situational Fit Analysis, Sullivan County Labor Shed Study, Doubleday Stadium Economic Impact Study, and various other studies. Martyna received her Bachelor of Science in English Secondary Education from East Stroudsburg University in Pennsylvania and has taught in public schools. She is dedicated in giving back and spends a lot of her time volunteering for things such as HOPE, the heroin and opioid prevention education, and hurricane relief efforts in Florida, both keeping her on her vital coordination is between local governments and nonprofit institutions. Karin Wadsack is the program manager for the tribal programs at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Karin, excuse me, Karin works with tribes across the country on energy planning. She is leading the Tribal Solar Initiative, a 3-year effort to identify and remove the regulatory barriers to tribal solar deployment. Now, as a reminder, if you have questions for one of our panelists, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We will be responding to all your questions at the end of the panel. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Drew for his presentation. Drew?
Hey, good afternoon. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, you can.
Perfect. Thank you, Charlie. Good afternoon. I'm Drew Burczyk, a consultant at 1898 & Co., a part of Burns McDonnell. Today, I'm going to run through our ongoing project with MTERA, which we've been working on with Jake and MTERA over the past 5 months. So thank you to Jake and MJ for letting us talk about our project today virtually. And hopefully in the future years, we can participate in this conference in person. The purpose of this project is to identify different energy agency business models and evaluate their associated economic benefits. So as Jake talked about the other day, MTERA seeks to pursue tribal energy projects that respect the sovereignty and unique culture of individual member tribes while leveraging the collective strength and resources of all MTERA tribes. This project aligns really well with these goals and MTERA's mission to empower Midwest tribes to manage their energy resources through collective action. Electric generation across the country has been experiencing a shift over recent decades, generally away from coal generation. This shift has been driven by economics, regulations, technology advancements, as well as several other factors. But the speed of this transition has varied in different parts of the country. And historically, MTERA members have not been able to shape the future of their bulk energy supply. And therefore, decisions made by electric utilities may not always align with tribal goals. Key aspects of MTERA's mission, which have shaped this project, really focus around collective action. Individually, each tribe may not have significant purchasing power. However, their combined scale of all Midwest tribes would help tribes achieve greater purchasing power and economies of scale. Furthermore, the energy industry is very complex, and each tribe is in a different place with regards to internal knowledge of the industry. A collaborative approach would allow tribes to share resources and experience with other tribes and increase economies of scale to increase efficiency. As mentioned previously, tribes who are primarily customers of local utilities have limited influence over their energy futures, and therefore are reliant on these utilities to determine the sources of their bulk energy supply and the speed at which they transition to cleaner energy. Currently, most of the money spent on electricity flows off of tribal land, and these energy business models provide an opportunity to change that going forwards. So I'm just going to walk through real quick some of the different energy supply purchasing options, which we identified as part of our study, and talk through these at kind of a high level. A majority of MTERA tribes today find themselves in bucket 1. This is as customers of the local utility, or as Brandy had mentioned during the previous segment, 5 different local utilities. Currently, energy supply resource mix, as I mentioned, is not controlled at all by the tribes and is determined by the selling utility or multiple utilities, who also set the rates of this electricity. The next step beyond this is becoming an aggregate customer, which would include aggregating tribal demand and negotiating rates with the incumbent utility. The third step is really where MTERA would start to be able to shape their future a little bit more. This requires MTERA or tribes to determine usage in every interval. The broker then would find one or more suppliers that can meet the forecast and whatever requirements MTERA places on the energy that they are purchasing. The broker is also then capable of securing transport of the energy from the generation location to the customer. This would allow MTERA to put different restrictions on that energy supply, requiring it to be green or other restrictions. Step 4 is becoming a broker. This would require bringing the brokerage capabilities in-house, setting up software procedures and processes to audit and oversight these capabilities. The brokerage has to register as a market participant and have enough capital available to meet market capital requirements. It's recommended that the broker would have trained with a brokerage and have actual trading experience. Brokerages tend to work in the physical market only. This would require hiring of staff as well who would have these capabilities. And then the next couple of buckets, getting into 5 and 6. So creating a complete trading and risk management agency and taking delivery responsibility, really build off of the becoming a broker step in this walkthrough. So creating a complete trading and risk management agency additionally requires set up firm portfolios, risk limits, financial trading capabilities, hedging strategies, and a long-term strategy for the portfolio. Instead of buying a day ahead to a month ahead, the TRM organization may make financial trades several years in advance, then trade around these positions to make money or lower costs. Taking delivery responsibility and balancing, this adds the requirements to manage delivery in the near real time, holding the firm transmission rights and having the ability to manage the demand side management at the different customer locations. Then getting into step 7 and 8 is where MTERA or tribes would be responsible for building different infrastructure. Step 7, so this is the first step towards becoming a utility, in most cases similar to a cooperative, more than a major investor-owned utility. Some infrastructure is built that connects buildings, generation to other locations. Tribes are now responsible for maintaining and operating this infrastructure. And then the last step that was somewhat identified was becoming a utility. In this step, tribes would become fully responsible for the provision of energy for their customers, from distribution to generation. MTERA and collective action helps to share these resources across tribes. This now puts MTERA in a position to help reduce energy waste, determine the carbon content of their energy, and make investments in customer equipment. MTERA would be expected to negotiate with the incumbent utility to either buy, rent, or use their infrastructure or build their own, and potentially their own people to help operations and maintenance. These were the general steps that were identified and are being evaluated as part of our study. As you step through these different buckets, the complexity and risk increase. These business models are made possible, a lot of them by the collective action and shared resources across different tribes, allowing for MTERA members who have limited scale or past energy knowledge to work together with other tribes towards a common goal of unlocking benefits that otherwise would not be possible.
Thank you, Drew. Now I would like to introduce Martyna for her presentation.
Hello, everyone. I believe MJ is going to be sharing my PowerPoint as soon as we get that up. Excellent. So capacity consulting, we were contracted to conduct a propane program feasibility study. You can go to the next slide. A little background about capacity consulting. Basically, we're a full service consulting and advisory firm that specializes in feasibility and funding economic development for business planning and startups, for nonprofits, for economic development agencies, and so on. So you can go to the next one. Our team right now is Eric, myself, and Eli, who's our senior energy specialist. We also have a robust team of researchers and other consultants that we use. I was the lead researcher on this project. And our next slide. And here we go with describing the propane feasibility study mission. And our goal was the whole entire reasoning behind this study is to reaffirm the sovereign objective of the tribes and empower these authorities and jurisdictions with energy independence and self-reliance. So at the basic level, that is the reason why this study was conducted. Next slide. So a few study goals that we have, and of course, the study is not limited to these goals. We just hope MTERA is able to use our report for future decisions. So we're here to explore the feasibility of that formal propane program to reduce costs for Midwest tribes and establish a profitable business. Our second goal is to investigate the potential of consolidating bulk purchase, supply chain, and distribution, including the cost benefit of any suggested infrastructure. We're here to analyze the propane supply chain, the bulk retail storage, transport vehicles, and retail distribution to homes and businesses on and off tribal lands. Now, if feasible, this study will also serve as a business plan and identify the next steps required for such a propane program to come into existence. So again, not limited to these goals, but many other goals within the actual report will come to light as soon as we present our finals. Our next slide, please. Now, there are many benefits to a formal propane program in pursuing a venture of this size. Just a few of these economic benefits include lower propane costs, a greater self-sufficiency for tribes, a competitive advantage that would generate increased revenues and increased market share and new job opportunities, opportunity to reinvest into enhanced job training programs, reduced reliance and dependency on federal government programs, additional investment in other businesses and economic programs. And as the employment increases, also it directly influences the economy, meaning secondary jobs and growth in service industry sectors. So all really great economic benefits. We can go to the next slide, please. Now, the overarching goal of this study is to explore those propane opportunities for MTERA member tribes. And these opportunities that we investigated include a separate tribal retail propane program, a collective tribal retail propane operation. So whether a tribe needs to operate their own propane program or whether a collective multi-tribal propane retailer should be established, the difference between those two. Some entrance into the propane supply chain, a consolidation of all the bulk purchases for the tribes, and a rail supplied propane terminal. We did not include a pipeline terminal. We did research that, but rail supplied is more feasible for a business structure. We can go to the next one. So to accomplish the study, we used our primary resources, our secondary resources, and we also had the opportunity to interview the MTERA members and industry experts in the region to come to our conclusions. Now, identifying a collective propane opportunity amongst the MTERA member tribes required us to really dive deep into the tribe's energy needs, the actual regional propane market, the geographic landscape of the region, and a consideration of all the tribes in the region, including those non-MTERA member tribes. So we conducted our analysis in phases to consider all the advantages and disadvantages of a possible propane program, which I mentioned earlier a few slides ago, the tribal propane operations, bulk purchase consolidation, rail terminal, and so on. So going into those specific subjects that we addressed in our study, the propane needs of each and individual MTERA tribe. We conducted interviews and questionnaires and followed up with those with secondary interviews and any questions that we may have answered, really to get a thorough perspective of what each tribe needs, because not every tribe is different, and not every tribe needs propane to the level of the next tribe. So they're diverse. They have a different geography, which spans hundreds of miles. We needed to understand exactly how each tribe uses propane. Some completely actually rely on it, and others have access to natural gas. Others have diversified with renewable energy, and they supplement with propane. A lot of tribal energy decisions, specifically, we're talking for this study, is heating fuel and are based on geographic location of the tribe. For example, Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe has a population of about 3,500, and the tribe doesn't use propane fuel at all because they have direct access to natural gas. So their advantage to a propane program from MTERA wouldn't be direct, because we wouldn't be providing them with propane. However, they would directly benefit from the revenue that would be generated by a propane program. However, on the other side of the coin, we have the Little River Band of Ottawa Indians population, which is scattered across their 9-county service area. So for them, saying that you should establish a retail propane company doesn't make any sense, because they're outside of the standard feasible industry mileage for a retail propane operation. Rather, they would benefit completely from a different propane program. So you can kind of get a taste of how we've considered all the individual needs of all the tribes for the MTERA members. But we also went to the next bullet point, non-MTERA tribal propane needs. So we looked at MTERA tribes from the questionnaire, interview, and secondary sources, but we also looked at non-MTERA propane needs. So we dove into what the benefits and opportunities are for them to join MTERA based on geographic locations and how a propane program would benefit them. So the same research we did for members of the organization, we also did for non-members. And obviously, it's not limited to the geography of the current members right now for MTERA. So we did that by directly looking at state county propane usage, understanding and layering that data on top of tribal data to give us a perspective of non-tribal members and understanding of the potential market share that MTERA may achieve. So this included also a propane household usage density map that we created, and we layered on top of all of that. So if you can imagine, since we're still in our final stages of the report, our maps aren't completed yet, but you can understand that we have a collective understanding of where all the tribes are, where all the density of propane usage is across the map, and that is layered on top of the infrastructure of the propane. market right now. And we also included a layer of the market developments that are happening, because there's a lot happening in the region right now. I mean, there's a lot of conversation about the closure of Enbridge Line 5. There's a possible new Michigan pipeline. There's several new terminals that have popped up to alleviate that absence of the Cochin pipeline in Minnesota back in 2014. And all of those market developments will directly affect our synthesization of our report based on what are the possibilities for MTERA. What rail propane terminals are possible? Is a bulk purchase more feasible than a terminal itself? So you can kind of see how our phases have layered on that knowledge, and how it's very, very tailored and customized for each and every single MTERA tribe. And then the best part is, I feel is that we also included the non-MTERA tribal members so that they can see the benefit of choosing an organization like this and joining one to see the benefit they would get directly. And then we also looked at the propane retail marketing saturation and where they are, where the needs are for propane. And then we also have a section in our study that dives into the geographic landscape of the region. And that includes the rail service infrastructure, the pipeline infrastructure, terminals. We audited all the terminals that we could find through EIA and through other website sources and through other conversations we've had to make sure we had a good idea, a solid foundation for all those rail terminals. So through all these different phases, we've come to some conclusions. And at this point in the study right now, we're synthesizing those conclusions and summarizing them so that we can present a meeting just like this over Zoom and have our decision makers informed at MTERA. So, and MJ, thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, Martina. And now I would like to introduce Karin for her presentation.
Thanks, Charlie. Let's see. If you can let me know when this is actually working, that'd be great.
You can see it.
All right. It's funny, you guys can see it and my screen's completely black. Thanks everybody. And really appreciate the opportunity to talk for a little bit today about this project. This has really been a fantastic conference, and I've been hearing from a lot of different folks who are participating about how much they're gaining out of it and how much they're, they really want to connect with some of the people who've been speaking. And I bring that up because I'm talking today about a specific project called Addressing Regulatory Challenges to Tribal Solar Deployment, which is a partnership between NREL and MTERA. It's a 3-year project funded by the US Department of Energy Solar Energy Technologies Office, and it's really focused on policy and solutions. And so you might say, oh, that's great, but is it really collective action? And I think because I've been hearing from so many folks through this project that we've met through the project about the work at the conference and people wanting to connect with each other, that's one element of this that really is collective action, where tribal energy staff and professionals are able to connect and work together on learning other people's lessons and accelerating their own tribe's path towards solar deployment, whatever it is that looks like. So as I mentioned, this is a partnership between NREL and MTERA, and we are about 1 year into the project, and so we have a team at the lab. And we have a number of folks at MTERA working with us. And one of the things that I'm really proud of with our team is that we have MJ, who you guys have heard about quite a bit this week, who is an intern with MTERA. And we have Ruben Martinez, who's an intern actually with an organization called Renewable Northwest that is partnering on this project. And so it's been just an absolute joy to be able to engage some additional early career tribal professionals on the project who weren't necessarily originally part of the project team, and to be able to kind of bring them into the fold and work on this and really dig in on some of these policy topics. The overarching goal of this project is to consider and identify the policy challenges. So not financial, not other barriers, but the policy roadblocks that are preventing, delaying, slowing, or making more cumbersome tribal solar deployment at any scale. So that could be rooftop solar, that could be a community solar array or a facility, parking lot, parking structure system, or it could be a solar utility scale project that is for revenue. And there's a lot of examples of projects that tribes have pursued over the last decade that have stumbled or been delayed because of policy issues and the differences between the way the policies work at the state level or at a local level and on tribal land. And so the goal is to identify what those policy roadblocks are, and then to work together to identify either the most effective solutions that have been deployed in the past, or to work together and develop new solutions and figure out where there are workarounds and where policy can change. And if you were listening to the first session on, I was going to say Tuesday morning, where Pilar Thomas just did this fantastic overview of the work that she and her colleagues are doing, advancing policy change at the federal level. That's just such a stellar example of taking advantage of the moment we're in and thinking critically about policy at all levels that can make a huge difference for energy projects on tribal land. This project originally was conceived to bring together 3 stakeholder groups: tribal staff and leaders, state regulators and their staff, and representatives from electric utilities. And throughout the work on the project, we've realized we also want to get the perspectives of people who work as renewable energy developers, so the development companies, and then people in the clean energy advocacy community, because a lot of those folks work very heavily in the policy space. And our goal is to bring these folks together to work on these policy solutions. And equally important from my perspective is the goal of just building strong relationships. So, we're going to work on this project. We'll be gone in 3 years, but when there's a utility representative or a state regulator who has never had a conversation with someone from a tribe, or if there's someone from a tribe who has no idea where to start with their state regulatory body if they want to get involved in a proceeding, or doesn't know which office of their 1,000-person utility, if they're over in BPA or something, to talk to, building these relationships and building relationships among different stakeholders, even if they're not in the same state, can really advance, I think, all of our collective ability to pursue solar projects in the way that any individual tribe might want to pursue those. So that's what we're trying to do. How are we actually doing it? What are the project steps? At the beginning of the project, about a year ago, we put out a questionnaire to really just establish who was interested in participating, what people's particular area of focus or things that they might be interested in getting out of the project might be, and what the relationships between the different stakeholder groups look like. And we have a summary of that on our project platform, which I'll talk about in a second, but that's available for you to see. There will be another questionnaire coming out in the latter part, I think, or middle of July. So keep an eye out for that, because if you're interested in this space, we'd like to engage you. We'd like to hear from you about what you think is important, or what you're hearing or learning about policy change that can advance tribal solar. We have a working group. As I mentioned, basically anyone who's interested in participating in this project is part of our working group. So we have an online platform that's hosted on the MTERA website. I'll show you in a second. It's really easy to find, and probably, since I can't multitask, one of my friends here can drop that in the chat. There you go. Thanks, Jake. So the working group is online. It's on the phone. It's going to be in person, I hope, at some point throughout the course of this project. And we have a lot of different ways to get involved. We have hosted a number of listening sessions late last fall and early this year with specific stakeholder groups or on specific topics to gather information and start thinking about what these challenges and solutions are. And then the ultimate goal of the project is to put together, with everyone who's interested, participation, a set of guidebooks and training materials. And so that is case studies, which I'll talk about in a sec, issue briefs focusing specifically on issues that are germane to projects on tribal land that are not germane to projects off of tribal land. And then other workbooks that go through policy issues and potential policy solutions. And we're really hoping that this project will be able to have a lasting commitment. MTERA is going to host the materials that we come up with, and we'll use guidebooks after the project ends. And we also will make those available so that anyone else who's interested can use pieces of that and have it be something that is also something you could modify or evolve for future use or update. My screen stopped working. There we go. As I mentioned, these case studies and guidebooks are the lasting material that's going to come out of this. And the case studies right now, we are in the process of pulling together 10 to 12 stories about tribal solar deployment. So either an individual tribe's experience with an individual project and what the policy challenges were and how they were overcome, or stories about a kind of policy instrument that could be used across a lot of different potential geographic areas for the advancement of tribal solar, or a common, maybe not policy instrument, but something like the existence of tribal liaison offices in certain utilities and why that's important for tribes in being able to achieve their goals in tribal solar deployment. And I just wanted to mention that we are not only putting together these 10 or 12 stories, but we're also going to be weaving examples throughout those guidebooks so that we're not just publishing some, dry issue briefs and policy material and appendices, including legal documentation, but we have concrete stories that really illustrate what it is we're trying to convey through all of that material. So we're always on the lookout for stories. And if you are someone who has been involved in a project and would like to engage with us and have us feature some of your work, go ahead and get a hold of me. That's my cell number and my email on screen. And you all know how to get a hold of Jake too. This is just a screenshot from part of our online platform on the MTERA website. And I just wanted to mention this because this is the easiest way to find us, and you can pass this information to other folks if they aren't on this session today, if you know someone who might want to get involved. We are not only do we have like this front page where you can get to the initiative as a whole, and we have updates about the different activities that we have. You can see here there's how to participate, and then there's a link there to our forum, which is our online kind of like blog and discussion area. I also have here just how you participate. I wanted to let everyone know there's a lot of different ways to get involved. We never anticipated that this project was going to be held virtually. Of course, when this was originally conceived, it was we're going to have a working group meetings all over the country, and we're going to be getting people together to really be rolling up our sleeves together and working on this. And so, like everybody else, we've pivoted and we're doing our best to be accessible and meet people in the way that's most convenient for them. So we have webinars, we have listening sessions. Some of this material is recorded, all of it is summarized and posted to the website. But we also have things like one-on-one calls where you can schedule time to talk with anybody on our project team about the project. You can go to the website to do that, or you can just reach out to me or Jake or Randy or someone else who's involved in the project, and we'll set up time to get you up to speed and answer any questions you have and hear your input. Like I mentioned, we have questionnaires, and then we have that online project forum where you can get engaged at any point that's convenient for you. Lastly, we have the privilege at NREL of co-hosting this conference with MTERA, and all of tomorrow, I'm really excited, is dedicated to sessions just individually discussing some of the policy topics that have been raised in our listening session as most important to advancing tribal solar. And so we've got distributed solar interconnection process, first session up tomorrow. Then how does rate design affect your distributed solar project? And then later in the day, we have utility scale. We have 2 sessions, one on utility scale interconnection and then one on utility scale electricity market participation. And I was really pleased to see Kevin's session earlier today. He's going to be joining that session and talking a little bit more about that particular aspect of the experience at Saginaw Chippewa. So I encourage you to join the session tomorrow. I think these probably will be pretty large sessions and will tee up more individual small group discussions in the future. And we're always interested in hearing what you think this project should focus on or what we should talk about. So please feel free to reach out if you think there's something that is really going to move the needle for tribal solar in the next couple of years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karin. Now let's begin our Q&A portion of today's session. So far, I see we only have one question, and that is, looks like this is for Drew. What is required to become a broker? Do you need to be a utility to be a broker?
Yep, so answering that question, you do need to be a registered market participant. So I believe Kevin and Saginaw Chippewa are the only tribe in the MISO market who are currently registered as market participants at this time. Additionally, you'd need experienced staff, energy trading technology, having a firm understanding of the tribe's energy needs, and then also having enough capital available to meet the market capital requirements as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. The next question is, what is the cost of entry?
If he's referring to their becoming a broker, I think that would depend a little bit tribe by tribe, and I don't have an exact figure on that. But there is a capital requirement based on the amount of energy that you would be trading or procuring. And so I don't have that exact figure, and that depend on what your energy demands were.
All right.
To be a market participant, not sure if Kevin is on the line or able to share his experience with Saginaw Chippewa and what that took for them to become a market participant in MISO.
Kevin might not be able to use his mic. So Kevin, if you would like to put your answer, if you have an answer in our chat, we'll be able to see your answers there.
Can you hear it? Am I unmiked or unmuted?
I could hear you now. Thank you.
All right. There is a cost to join MISO. I think the application fee is like $10,000, but there's also all of the capital requirements and how they rate you. If you really want to get into the gory details of that process, I believe it is Schedule L of the tariff that defines the credit policy for MISO. So they take 3 years of audited financial statements and the different metrics that they break down. So receivables turnover, debt to income, all of those different things. They build a score out, and then based on your score, they will assign you non-FTR credit, so unsecured credit. The other thing you can do is put, some sort of collateral in there. So there's a lot of moving parts to being a market participant, which is why collective action is good, or having one tribe be part of the market and then other tribes can piggyback onto that. So then you only one person has to deal with all that and all the other tribes can take advantage of it.
Thank you, Kevin. We have another question. This one is for Martyna. Could you give more specific tribe examples from your analysis?
Yeah, I could. Absolutely. I'm just looking through my information right here. So how our analysis was completed is that we analyzed every single MTERA tribe singularly in our report, and they're in one big section in the report itself. And then we summarize that into like bullet points so that if you just wanted to read the first section of that part, I can share a few of them, but ideally you just wait till the report is completed. Some of the aspects of the tribes that really are feeding into our analysis and our conclusions is, for example, just looking, there was one particular tribe that utilizes natural gas completely because, here we go. So the Oneida Nation is about 23,000. But that's those that are living on tribal ground, that are scattered, but also there's 5,000 tribal members, and that tribe's also made up of rural and non-rural residents. And since they're so close to the Green Bay metropolitan area, that allows them to have a natural gas outlet, and it results in lower propane usage. So what's interesting is when you analyze that from county data, it seems like they should have a lot higher propane usage, but directly communicating that with them and having that conversation revealed, no, in actuality, they have very low propane usage. That's why those interviews and questionnaires were so important. Without being able to interview even the non-tribal members, we had to resort to Census Bureau data, EIA data, county data, and fact check all those statistics against that to understand what their actual propane usage was. Another one I could share is Mille Lacs is very, very unique in that it has different districts. So they're not centralized in one location. They're not scattered across a massive location. They're around the lake right there. And so some of those districts require more propane usage while the other districts don't require that much propane or don't have that much propane used. And because there's such distance between these districts, different retail marketers are servicing those different districts. So one propane company could not service them. So Mille Lacs could not operate a singular propane company to serve all of their residents and to give them a different rate for their propane either. So understanding the different makeup of all the tribes and their geography is super important for us to provide some sort of recommendation that they can pursue a venture of some sort. And it's very different. I think what's really cool about this study is what Eric and I went into thinking would be a solution for MTERA is actually being morphed as we're finishing up the study at the end, because we're looking singularly at all the tribes. And at the end of the day, it benefits MTERA tribes, but we want to benefit non-MTERA tribes as well. But we got all of our really great information from the organization. So hope that answers your question, Karin, but you'll get a copy of the study, hopefully.
Thank you, Martina. Next question is for Karin. What has been the largest policy issue that you have found for tribes from your research? Have you found that many tribes have net metering issues with MTERA members? Have you designed policy solutions for both net meter and investment tax credits?
Jerry, thank you for asking that question. One of the sessions we're talking about tomorrow is going to deal specifically with net metering, how it works, and how it affects project economics. I think that for much smaller scale projects, net metering is definitely one of the largest policy hurdles that we've heard about. And just to be specific, in a lot of places there is no net metering arrangement, or it's very unclear, or there's nothing on the books and it has to be developed. So that can really delay projects, whether or not the net metering arrangement itself is favorable or unfavorable to project economics. So that is definitely something we've come across a lot. I think it's interesting that in a lot of cases, lack of policy, whether it's on the tribal side, the co-op side, the utility side, the state side, turns out to be a policy barrier that really slows things down. And I think anyone who's worked on a tribal solar project is probably nodding their head saying, yeah, I know what you're talking about. So with respect to the investment tax credit, just really quickly, we had not originally anticipated that this project would delve into federal policy, but I see that there is a huge opportunity right now. So stay tuned. It's not something we're talking about tomorrow, but if you're interested in having a conversation about that, reach out to me. I think there are a lot of people working on that across the country, and I think we may highlight some of that in our work. So thanks for the question.
Another question for you, Karin. Are you finding significant differences on the kinds of barriers across the country, or is it pretty consistent?
Well, there's definitely, it depends, not so much whether you're in the Northwest or the Southwest as a tribe, but whether your incumbent utility is a co-op or investor-owned utility, or is governed by the state or governed by their, elected board, et cetera. And so I think the policy challenges are almost more dependent on the way that the state rules are structured, or the kind of utility that a tribe is served by, at least at the more distributed scale projects. I think for utility scale projects, it does matter a great deal whether you are in one of the market parts of the country, so California, the Northeast, MISO, or whether you're in that, large area between California and the middle of the country where it's mostly monopoly utilities. So if you're talking about utility scale, that matters.
Okay, thank you very much, Karin. And also thank you to Martina and also to Drew. I encourage everyone to join tomorrow's session. And tomorrow's session will be the workshop in interconnecting process, policy and distributed generation solar. Another workshop of how does utility rate structure affect the feasibility in distributed generation solar projects. And then interconnected process and policy for utility scale solar. And then the last workshop is electricity market basics and the fundamentals of utility scale generation projects. All right, thank you very much, everyone. And we hope to see all of you again tomorrow for these workshops.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Charlie.
Yeah, thank you so much.